Good afternoon. This is Dr. Judith. I'm continuing with the last time that I shared with you about this journey that I'm on and that I began about approximately 4 years ago. And I was sharing with you earlier about how when you've decided to give it all to the Lord, how He changes you and your circumstances. And even though you're in the valley and things are difficult, you really are not alone. And that's when you find out that He is with you every step of the way. That's when you find out that His word is true when He says He'll never leave nor forsake you. That's when you find out that you are really very special to Him and He will take care of you. One of the biggest and most important lessons that I have learned in this season, this trust in Him and giving my life over to Him and calling out to Him and saying, have your will, let your will be done, let your perfect will be done in my life, not my will but your will. Once I did that, things started changing dramatically for me. Not all the best in terms of what a human being would expect to call the best, but in terms of God and in terms of what He wants for His children, obviously wonderful, wonderful things began happening, although they might have had a cloak of sadness, loss, or even defeat. But that was the surrounding things. It was not the meat of the conversation or of my life. It was not the core of my life. It was the outlining areas of my life. That's where the devil tempts you to look. As with Abraham and Sarah, he tempted them to look not at God's promise that He had made many years before, but he tempted them to look at, especially Sarah, he tempted them to look at their limitations, their physical limitations, their age, that it's not possible that they could actually conceive of a baby in their old age. And that's what the devil does with us, is that he makes us not remember God's promise and makes us recognize and pay full attention to his limitations, the devil's limitations, and what we see with our natural eyes. So though I saw these negatives and limitations, with the help of God, I continued, and I'm still continuing today, to believe that His promise will come true. And His promises for me have more to do with others than it does with me as an individual. And I won't get into that today, but His promises basically have me going to spread His word and to do it in perhaps a mightier way than I would ever have thought, and a wider arena than I would have ever thought. So I find myself, realizing that even when I talked earlier about the gift of being able to spend money well, I had to acknowledge Him and say, you're the one that gave me that gift. I was doing it all these years and doing it excellently and helping other people to manage their finances. And yet, like I said before, one of the first things that He allowed to be attacked in this new season was my finances. And it's just amazing. But even though it's far more limited in terms of the amount that I have, wow, I can spend it well. But like I said earlier, I give Him the glory for that. I give Him all the praise and the honor, because He's the one that gave me the mindset to be able to spend a little and make it seem like a lot. And so the journey that appears very difficult and limiting and very negative to others looking on, and at first it did appear that way to me too, but not in totality. For sure, I knew that God was up to something when He placed me in this valley of the shadow of death. And like I said, I came out of it better off. I'm coming out of it better off, because I have learned who to give the glory to, who to give the honor to, and who to give the praise to. Certainly not me. And that everything good that I have or that I've received certainly comes from Him. And the last part of what I'll share with you today about this journey and this valley of decision and dark valley that I've been through for the last 4 years predominantly is obedience. That is perhaps the greatest lesson that I've learned during this season, is how to be obedient to the Lord. It is fascinating. I now understand what it means when the Bible says obedience is better than sacrifice. I understand it. I got it now. And in an earlier broadcast, I talked about that, at least for a little bit. And so I didn't explain where I learned that. I learned that in this season, in this valley of the shadow of death. I learned that to be obedient to the Lord, there's no sacrifice. There's no lamb, there's no goat, there's nothing that I could sacrifice that would give him as much pleasure as for me to be obedient to him. I often tell my son that when he's obedient to me, it makes me just mount up. It makes me want to do wonderful and awesome things for him because of his obedience to me, his parent. And I liken that on a human level to how God must feel when we as his children learn to be obedient to him. I believe that when we are obedient, he has his angels all gathered together and he just says, listen, now we're really going to do some stuff in, through, and for her or him because they have done the better thing. They've become obedient. This has been Dr. Judith. Until next time, God bless and do take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.